A very good day and a very good week to all of our viewers and listeners. This week's Torah portion that we will read, Shabbos and Shul, is Parshas Yitro. At the very beginning of the section that we will read, so the text introduces the reunion between Moshe, Yitro, and his entire family. As the Torah describes the events, so the Torah focuses its attention. First two words of the parasha is Vayishma Yisro. What is the focus of attention? The Torah is telling us, according to all of the commentators, especially Rashi, and Rashi in his famous comment asks the question, Mashmu Shoma Obo, what precipitated, what exactly moved Yisro, historically speaking, that occurred to the Jewish people to come with the family, have a reunion with Moshe, and ultimately, Mashmu Shema Oba, convert to Judaism. Yisro was Nizgaya, so there must have been historical events that had just taken place that precipitated and motivated his change of heart. Till now, he did not have any inkling to come back with his daughter and children. Kadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe, why are you bringing your wife and your children to Mitzrayim? You have enough trouble, sorrow, misery from the Jewish children that are already there. Why would you want to increase the sorrow and the trouble by bringing more people to Mitzrayim and having even more people being afflicted by the bondage of Mitzrayim? So Rashi insists that what moved him was simply the parting of the Red Sea, Kriyas Yamsuf, and Milchemes Amalek, the battle with Amalek. This is what Rashi says, and this is, of course, also a Chazal. And the question naturally arises. We know that Yisro heard other events that took place, and Rashi indicates them. Rashi said that Yisro was surely aware of the great miracle of the man, the sustenance that came down from heaven, as well as Bereshel Miriam, the miraculous waters that the Jewish people were present drinking in the Midbar. Nevertheless, Rashi persists and insists that the motivating factor of all these great events that took place, what precipitated Yisro's desire to change his identity, what was the reason for the upheaval in Yisro's life, was these two events, Kriyas Yamsuf and Milchemes Amalek. And we would like to analyze both of the events and see exactly why the combination of both of these events was responsible for Yisro's change of heart. The end of Parshas Beshalach, the preceding parsha, we read about the war that the Jewish people waged against Amalek. The question that basically we would ask, although it's basically not asked, but the basic question is, who was victorious? So the obvious answer is the Jewish people apparently were victorious. That's true on one level. Nevertheless, on another level, on a metaphysical level, in contradistinction to the physical war, we shall see that Amalek indeed was triumphant. Difficult to say this, but that happens to be the facts, and that's the way the Torah and our sages present it to us. At this juncture, we should like to see exactly what the punishment for Amalek was. The Torah doesn't seem to provide too much background for Amalek's malicious and vicious attack. We are in the dark, basically. But one thing is clear, that the punishment that the Torah exacts of Amalek, that's crystal clear. And in Parshas Kiseitze, when the Melchemes Amalek is recounted, so we see something incredible, simply astonishing. There'll be a time when the Almighty God will give you rest from all your enemies. And our sages say this refers to the Messianic age, Bias HaMashiach, when Melech Mashiach will reign supreme. And at that time, so you will have a commandment, and that commandment will be Timche Zecher Amalek Mitachas Hashamoyim Lo Tishkoch. You shall blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under the heaven, and don't forget this. You shall not forget this commandment. In the long historical process, it's possible to forget it because it will take place only in the Messianic age. So we're instructed, Lo Tishkoch, you shall not forget it. And of course, we all have the question, it's a very simple question, why did the Torah exact such a punishment of Amalek? Basically, the question revolves around a verse in Shmuel that Rashi brings down. And that verse is, Leisachmol Olov, you shall not have any compassion upon Amalek, ve'mato mi'ish ad isha, ve'oilo v'ad yoinek, mishor v'ad seh, midomol v'ad chamor. Shmuel commanded in the name of the Almighty to smite Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not, but slay, smite, both man and woman, infant and suckling child, ox and sheep, camel and ass and donkey, that there should not be any object, any possession of Amalek that could bring about some sort of remembrance that there was once a nation that was called Amalek. Every single item has to be destroyed as well. And basically we see here that the Torah has said evidence. It's as if the Torah is bringing evidence, is testifying that Amalek has lost every spark of holiness. There's absolutely no righteous spark left in the soul of Amalek. We say in the Yom Noraim, the Seder of Tefillah, we say V'chol harisha kula koshan tichla, and wickedness will evaporate like smoke. And the purpose that Amalek will exist till that time is in order that we should totally annihilate Amalek. Total annihilation. Little children, babies, everything has to be annihilated. And of course, the question arises due to the fact that Amalek, that Amalek came, they conducted a war, they waged a war against the Jewish people. So this should warrant a total destruction. And the reason that it was postponed, the Gemara tells us, astonishingly, till the Messianic age, is because after Sancheriv came, so all the nations were mixed up. So we have a confusion. We're perplexed. We don't know who Amalek is, because all of the nations, even though till Sancheriv were separate and independent, they were identifiable. But after Sancheriv, they simply lost their identity, they merged, integrated among themselves all the nations, and we have the halachic maxim called the Parshat Meruba Parish. If anybody is separated from the majority, so we say he belongs to the majority, so therefore we are unable to fulfill, realize this mitzvah because we don't have the opportunity to do it. The vehicle doesn't present itself since we cannot identify the nation of Amalek and any individual that even if we think is an Amaleki, but since we have a doubt about it, so we have to assume he comes from the majority of the nations, which are not Amalek. So that's why it was postponed until Bias HaMashiach. So the question naturally arises, why? What warranted such an extreme punishment, and what exactly can we decipher if we explore a little bit into the character of Amalek, that their viciousness and their maliciousness was so great that this punishment is warranted. Before we do that, of course, there's another question that perhaps is a relevant question that we should focus our attention on. We Jewish people are blessed with three characteristics. We are Rachmanim, Baishanim, Goim Lechasadim. We are very shy people, reserved, almost introverted. In addition, we are a kind, merciful, compassionate people. By us, the principle, insofar as our entire existence is concerned, all-inclusive, is V'alachta b'drachav, that we try to emulate HaKadosh Baruch Hu, imitati yodei, mahu rachum, avato rachum. Just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is compassionate and merciful, so are we. And we're also a nation that extends chesed, kindness, generosity, charity to everyone. This is basically the very character of the Jewish people. How is it that such a great nation should be called upon to annihilate an entire nation, including children? So this is a question that has perturbed certain individuals. The answer, we were told by our leaders of past generations through a very, very good example, a role model. And that, of course, was Reb Chaim Soloveitchik, the famous Reb Chaim from Brisk, who, during the course of his lifetime, from the time he became the Rav in Brisk in the 1890s till 1918, so he became famous. But first and foremost, he was famous for being a pillar of kindness. In the Sefer, the book Ishim Vishitos of Rav Zevin, one of the great Talmidei Chachamim in past generations in Klal Yisrael, so in his essay on Reb Chaim Soloveitchik, so he deals with his personality, his character, and he says he's a historical figure in kindness, almost a myth. He recounts many stories. The one that he recounts numerous occasions is that he had an unfortunate woman who had a child. It happened at times in Brisk that a woman would give birth illegitimately, and she would leave her infants in the hands of Reb Chaim. How? So Rav Zevin tells us she simply left the child on the doorstep of Reb Chaim. Reb Chaim would always check. Anytime he was home, course of the night, he would get up every hour to check whether there was a child that was placed on his doorstep. This is a famous story of the Gemilus Chassan and Reb Chaim. The blaze of silver, when the great Rabban of America, who learned by Reb Chaim, told us that one day he decided to learn in Brisk, so he went to Brisk, and after he went to Brisk, he found out where Reb Chaim lived, knocked on the door. He wanted to see Reb Chaim, so he came in, and he saw that there was no wallpaper on the wall, there was no painting on the wall, there was advertisements of all the store owners in Brisk that they happened to advertise in the home of Reb Chaim. Reb Chaim accepted it, made no protest. On the contrary, he enjoyed doing a chesed to anybody he could. When he came in to see Reb Chaim, so he was learning Gemara with two little babies in his hands, with a bottle, giving each baby a bottle of milk. Only Reb Chaim Brisk could do so. So we know his lofty, moral, ethical level. No question about it. There was no one, said Reb Lezer Silver and Reb Zevin, that could even dream of doing the extraordinary kindness that Reb Chaim did. Now that we're talking about great Gedolei Yisrael, and they themselves are included in their statements that it was so extraordinary, it was so surreal, that it was difficult even to dream, and a good dream of doing such kindness. So in terms of moral sensibilities and total care, concern, and compassion for human beings, and the sensitivity to human suffering, so Reb Chaim was one of a kind. It was above and beyond every kind. So despite this lofty moral sensitivity, he managed to live deeply with the totality of the Torah and the halacha, including the commandment to destroy the 7 nations and Amalek. How was that possible? Such a great ethical, moral person? The answer is quite obvious. Like Rav Zevin tells us, Yira Shamayim, his fear of heaven, his emunah was so great that these things did not bother him. This neutralized, de-emphasized any moral element, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is merciful, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is kind, and in order to fulfill these mitzvahs, if we have any type of trial or tribulation, so we have to intensify our Yira Shamayim, our emunah, and our dveikus, and our bitachon, our faith, and our closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the only way we can deal. If we have a sting of some sort of moral conscience, we have to realize that we are not on a great moral level anyway, like Reb Chaim. And Reb Chaim had no problems, and he was one of the most moral, ethical, kind people from Sheishes Yimei Bereshis, from the 6 days of creation. Getting back to the question that we asked originally, so it would appear that the Malbim, one of the great commentators of the Torah, answers this question. We should just like to articulate, if we can, in our limited way, and elaborate on the Malbim's explanation. So we see over here, insofar as the mitzvah to remember Amalek, every year it's incumbent for us to read the section in Kiseitse, which commemorates the evil doings of Amalek. As we said a moment ago, the Torah has said testimony that he's the very incarnation of evil, the personification of wickedness. And when the Torah recounts the original attack that Amalek undertook against the Jewish people, so it tells us something which apparently is very esoteric. It says, Zocher es asher asolocha Amalek baderech, v'tzeischa miMitzrayim asher korcha baderech Remember what Amalek did unto thee. By the way, as he came forth from Mitzrayim, how he met you on the way and smote the hindmost of thee, he attacked by way of ambush. And who did he attack? All those who were feeble and weak, that they were in the rear. And when did he attack them? When you were faint and weary, and he did not fear HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What is the pshat? What exactly did the Torah mean to tell us by this description? So the Malbim explains to us that even in warfare, there are 5 basic reasons why one country attacks another country, why one nation undertakes a war against another nation. The first reason is imperialism, in order to expand the boundaries. Israel today has been accused of imperialism. They were interested in expanding the little territory they had, so therefore they decided to annex certain territories to them. So that's called imperialism. And that is a reason, a logical reason why one country, one nation conducts a war against another. But imperialism cannot have been the motivating factor insofar as Amalek is concerned, for one basic reason. Says the Malbim, very, very simple, because when did they attack? Baderech. Klal Yisrael did not have a homeland. They were sojourners. They were travelers. They had no homeland. So there was nothing to conquer. There was nothing to capture. No territories belonged to Klal Yisrael. That imperialism would be a justifiable reason to undertake a war. That's what the Torah means by the word baderech. The second phrase is b'tzeichem mimitzrayim. We know there's another reason for one nation conducting a war against another nation. And that, of course, is a preemptive strike. When you fear, when you're terrorized that perhaps this country A will attack you, so you undertake a strategic preemptive strike. The 6-day war, Israel undertook a preemptive strike against the enemies that surrounded Israel. Millions and millions and millions of Arabs were about to attack. So the Jewish nation attacked before. So this was a defensive type of preemptive strike. There was nothing to fear by the Jewish people. So they had just come out of Mitzrayim. They were baderech. They were far away, according to the Chazal, from the gvul, from the boundary of Amalek. It wasn't like in the war of Sichon v'Oig, where the Jewish people were at the boundary and they did pose a threat. So they posed no threat. Chazal said they came thousands and thousands of miles to attack the Jewish people. So therefore, preemptive strike was not the rationale. Perhaps there was some sort of incitement. The Jewish people incited Amalek. So the Malbim said that also has been discounted by the verse, because it says, Asher karcha baderech. It happened suddenly, without any background of incitement. World War I was started by an act of incitement when the Archbishop of Duke was assassinated. That was an act of incitement. That was also missing. What is the fourth? Napoleon is a very good example. He wanted prestige, glory, majesty for France, so he attacked Russia. Covet wanted the great honor of having a glorified nation of France, that they could be victorious over Russia. That was not the case by Amalek, says the Malbim, because it says, as we mentioned a moment ago, Who did he start the fight against? Who were the ones that he attacked first? The enfeebled, the weak, who were in the rear. And the entire Jewish nation was faint and weary. Says the Malm, if you're interested in glory, you do what Napoleon did, you attack a strong nation. Because to be victorious over weak, feeble people will not add to your glory whatsoever. It will not enhance your prestige. So that was also missing. Perhaps Amalek undertook to attack the Jewish people due to religious reasons. After all, whether it's right or we know that it's absolutely wrong, but the Crusades were interested in imposing their belief upon everybody else. So therefore, what did they do? They started the war to enforce their belief upon other people. So that surely was not there, because the Yarei Elikim, they're the ones that rebelled against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So why did Amalek attack? All the logical reasons insofar as warfare is concerned were totally absent. And this, the Torah has told us, Eidus. The Torah, as it were, is a witness that there was no logical, rational motivation, inspiration, insofar as the rational, logical reasonings behind conducting a war is concerned by Amalek. So we're very curious. We would like to know. The answer is, according to the Malbim, provided to us by the Torah itself. The Torah has now provided us with this answer. At the end of Parshas B'Shalach, so the Torah tells us something which really we should faint away when we read it. Vayemer Hashem el Moshe, Baruch Hu told Moshe, "Save Zeisi Karim B'Sefer, you shall inscribe this as a permanent memorandum, memorial in the Sefer Torah, V'Sim Bozne Yoshua, Ki Mochoy Emche Zecher Amalek Mitachas Hashemayim, that I personally will wipe out, blot out, annihilate Amalek from under the heavens." And Moshe Rabbeinu responded and said, "Ki yor al keis tov milchama la'Hashem ba'Amalek midor dor." The hand of Amalek, as it were, is on the Kisei HaKavod, on the holy throne, and there's a war to God against Amalek in every generation. And Rashi quotes the famous Chazal. It's unbelievable. It's astonishing to say this. Ein hakisei shalem ve'en Hashem shalem ad sheyimcha zecher Amalek. Kadosh Baruch Hu's throne is not intact, and Kadosh Baruch Hu's name is not intact. Till bayomahu Hashem echad u'shmo echad. Till that day when Amalek will be defeated, bayom, that day, Hashem echad, God will be one. U'shmo echad. These are words. We're just saying the word. We have no understanding of this. Absolutely nothing. Is difficult even to say it. Wouldn't be written in the Torah, we would not be allowed to say such statements. So we see that the war was not against the Jewish people. The war was against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, basically speaking, the Jewish people that came out from Mitzrayim, they represented HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They were the representative nation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that they will publicize who HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the entire world. So therefore, Amalek physically attacked the Jewish people. However, in a metaphysical sense, Chazal tell us that Amalek came lahachriv eskala olam kuloi, to destroy the entire world. What does that mean? To destroy the entire world. So the Akedah is from the Rishonim. Akedas Yitzhak lived in the times of Rashi, a little bit after Rashi, and he has a classical commentary on the Torah. So he tells us something remarkable, something absolutely remarkable. Most of the Sefer is in Pshat, a little bit in Drush, and also he's very steeped in Kabbalah. This perhaps combines all three. But he tells us as follows. In the Shira Sayam, which we recite every day, so we say, Shamu Amim Yirgozum, the peoples have heard and they tremble. Chilochaz Yoshvei Peloshes, pangs have taken hold, the inhabitants of the Philistines. Ozna Alufei Edoim, that's Esav. Then were the chiefs of Edom affrighted. They lay Moav, Yochazem Roag, the mighty men of Moav trembling, took hold of them. And all the inhabitants of Canaan melted away. Till Kriyas Yamsuf, even after Yetzias Mitzrayim, our sages say, Am Yotzam Mitzrayim. What did all the nations say about the Jewish people? Am Yotzam Mitzrayim. A nation departed from Mitzrayim. After Kriyas Yamsuf, they changed their tune. They said, Kel Hoitziyam Mi Mitzrayim. God took them out from Mitzrayim. That was the powerful effect, the miraculous effect of Kriyas Yamsuf. And it was so significant, so important, says the Akedah, that the Chazal record that Kriyas Yamsuf did not only take place by the Red Sea, not only was there a splitting of the Red Sea, but all the waterways in the world were also split at the time that the Red Sea was split. And not only that, the Chazal say, if somebody happened to have a container of water, so during the time of Kriyas Yamsuf, there was a vacuum in the container in between, and the water became two waterways, a vacuum in the middle, and the water congealed along the sides of the container. In other words, Kriyas Yamsuf took place in miniature by all the water containers and all the water rights in the entire world. What was the purpose for this? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu was interested, everybody should find out about Kriyas Yamsuf. Everybody should find out that it was a great miracle, that the Egyptians drowned in the Red Sea, and the Jewish people were saved in the Red Sea because they went upon dry land. And after they finished the exodus from the Red Sea, so all of a sudden the waterways returned and drowned all of the Egyptians. It was one person would inquire, what's going on here? Look, what's happening here? And ultimately he would find out through Chaver Yizbei, by one person telling another person. So they would find out very, very shortly exactly what took place. And this was pivotal because with this, everybody was convinced, and everybody would know that there is a God, Almighty God, omnipotent, total control of the universe and all the functions of the universe. They would simply all respond with terror, and they would undertake, obviously, self-introspection like Yitro did, and they would convert either to Judaism or convert to living a life abiding by the will of the Almighty. So what happened? So yeah, gave the reports, and we see it clear as the day. What is the verse that precedes Ve'abe Amalek? Israel B'Refidim, what precedes that? So we see an interesting verse, and it says like, Hayesh Hashem b'kerbeinu im oyim. The Jewish people ask the question, is God in our midst or is he not in our midst? They have mon min hashamayim. Every day food is rained down from heaven. They have a miraculous well. They're surrounded by ananei hakoved, clouds of glory to protect them. And they came to the question, Hayesh Hashem b'kerbeinu, and they had a doubt. We know Amalek mathematically, numerically is Suffolk. 240 is the numerical equivalent of Suffolk a doubt. What's the connection? Because Amalek conducted a war against HaKadosh Baruch Hu, against God Almighty. And what did Amalek say? They were the first to say it. And afterwards, a lot of people continued the approach of Amalek, Rahman al-Islam. And that is very simple. They said, it ain't necessarily so. You think it was a miracle? It wasn't a miracle. What's the reason? Because if this was God directed, so what would be the reason why God would direct the splitting of the Red Sea to punish the Egyptians and to save Klal Yisrael, to save the Jewish people? Of course, that we could understand. The Egyptians were enticed to come into the Red Sea after they saw that the Jewish people were traveling through the Red Sea on dry land, so they thought, there'll be dry land for us too, and after a few seconds, they were totally drowned. So it's very possible, right, to understand that this was God-oriented. Perhaps it's probable. Why was it necessary that all the waterways in the world at that time should also split? Why was it necessary for a container of water to split? This is totally unnecessary. And we know the Jewish people were told in the Torah, it's stated emphatically that God does not make a miracle. That's not necessary. This is totally unnecessary. So every explanation they rejected. And they said it was an aberration of the physical world. There's a time, just like when you have a full moon. So then the waves of the ocean defy gravity and they lift themselves due to the gravitational pull of the moon, as opposed to the gravitational pull that's embedded at the bottom of the sea. So the Jewish people are very intelligent people, so they knew how to utilize, how to exploit this physical aberration that took place in the universe at that time. No miracle whatsoever. So they casted a doubt. And this doubt, insofar as HaKadosh Baruch Hu's manifestation of his might is concerned, affected even the Jewish people. Hayesh Hashem b'kerbeinu emoyim. We don't understand such a question, regardless of all the different interpretations. But Amalek succeeded metaphysically in bringing doubts into the world. Doubts about HaKadosh Baruch Hu being omnipotent. Doubts about HaKadosh Baruch Hu conducting the world. Is it true, Amalek asked, that everything is decreed at the very outset? No, it ain't necessarily so. Things happen accidentally. Things happen incidentally. We don't believe in that. They know the negative, it's called the mato and the mal. A person doesn't get a small, minute hit on his finger unless it was decreed. We believe in Hashgacha Pratis. We believe that our Father in heaven, right, does everything, decrees everything. Everything is decreed. Nothing is accidental. Nothing is an aberration of nature. The laws of nature are never suspended. If they are suspended according to our myopic view, so it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu is suspending them. And that is what the Akedah said, Asher Karcha Baderech is Lashon Mikra. They said it was accidental, it was incidental, an aberration of the laws of nature. In addition, Asher Karcha Baderech is Lashon Kar, cold, Sinincha, Chazal say. They cooled off the impact of Kriyas Yamsuf. It's very easy to ruin things. It's very easy to cast doubts and aspersions upon things. And that is the Kayach of Amalek. It affected everyone, to a degree, of course. And that is why the Chazal said something which is almost outrageous. We shudder, tremble when we read this, that Ki'ilu Amalek is a konaf hamechasa hashchina. It's a wing that covers up the shchina. Even for us, we do not see HaKadosh Baruch Hu everywhere. That's what we should see. Everything is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We don't see him everywhere. And only the Yosid Lover, only in the future, when Amalek will be destroyed, then we will see Almighty God reflected in every single phenomena, every raindrop, every falling of a stone, every rising of a gow in the sea. Everything we will be able to perceive is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore the Torah tells us emphatically, Milchama Hashem ba'Amalek midar dar. It's a war of God against Amalek. Because how do we become a nation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Abiding by the Torah, of course. But if we ask ourselves the question, the salient feature of how we become the nation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how is it? So the Torah told us, Tomim tiyem Hashem Elokecha. You shall be wholehearted with the Lord your God. And Rashi says, absolute trust, absolute faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Don't try to penetrate the future. Accept everything which HaKadosh Baruch Hu does, because we know HaKadosh Baruch Hu did it. There's nothing accidental, nothing incidental. And Tomim Tiyeh, wholehearted and perfect, we have to go with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Chavetz Chaim always recited this Rashi. And if you're Tomim Tiyeh, you're im Hashem Elokecha. You are Chelkoi ve'amoy. You want to be with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You want to be part of the Jewish nation. You want to be Amoy, his nation, Chelkoi, part of the Jewish nation. Of course we have to abide by Torah, but what's unique? What do we have to do in a special way, above and beyond? Tomim Tiyeh. No questioning HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not being critical of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not analyzing, accepting everything, because we know that it's from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and for the Jewish people, he's our Father, he loves us, and everything is for our good. We are very, very limited, we understand nothing, and this is how we become a Jewish nation. And the Yesod of Am Yisrael, of Tomim Tiyeh, Im Hashem Elokecha, was attacked, and there was a war that was conducted by Amalek directly against the Yisod, the very foundation of the entire world. And that's why it says in Chazal, we're going to destroy the world. Atheism, agnosticism, believe that there are things that are accidental and incidental, that are not decreed by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is all the result of Amalek, and this is the Churban. To a large extent, they succeeded. They took away the invincibility of Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael left Mitzrayim, and by Kriyas they were invincible. They left Biyad Rama with an exalted arm, metaphorically speaking. All the nations trembled. They realized that this is the Am Hashem. And this is what Amalek, they know who God is, like Rabbi Aaron Cutler explains, and nevertheless they rebel against God, and they rebel against his entire ruling dominion of the world. And Tomim Tiyeh Hashem Elokecha is the Yesod HaYesodis for the Jewish people. It's called Our Father. He's also called Our Mother. And like the Baal Tanya explains, we'll elaborate upon this a different time, we don't have that much time, that emunah, bitochen, trust, faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu can only be achieved by katnus hamoichim, by not thinking too much, by, so to speak, going back to our youth when we did not have the intellectual prowess of understanding too much. And I'm like an infant that's being held by my mother. I'm being held by my father in heaven. I'm being held by my mother in heaven. My whole existence, which only a child can experience, is an existence where I'm bound up with my father and mother, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, just like I was when I was a child, when I had absolutely no knowledge. I felt the close bond of my mother and father. And like the Baal Tanya says, the first words a child says is Abba V'Ima, father, mother, tati, mami. He doesn't know what a father is. He doesn't know what a mother is, but instinctually, his very instinct tells him that without the element of togetherness with his father and mother, he's totally lost. He has no existence. Of course, a person cannot stay an infant. He cannot remain in his youth his entire life. He has to grow intellectually. Nevertheless, that experience that he was able to gain in his youth has to be something which is permanent, ingrained in him, and he has to feel experientially, existentially. Tomim Tiyeh Hashem Elokecha. He was never critical of his mother and father when he was an infant and when he was young. Could not explain why they're mother and father, but those are the first words that he speaks. And the deeper meaning, says the Baal Tanya, is that his existence is bound up with them. When he gets older, he becomes more isolated, more independent. He relates and associates with his father and mother intellectually, but insofar as HaKadosh Baruch Hu is concerned, intellectual relationship knocks out the very, very foundation of Dveikus B'Hashem, which can only be achieved like Yigomal Olai Imoy, says David HaMelech, like I'm a suckling child in the hands of my mother. That has to be felt, and that is the antidote to the doubts that Amalek casts. And with that avodah, that service that we can do to Melech HaMashiach, so that will destroy to a large extent the very koyach that Amalek possesses even to this day. Thank you very, very much for viewing. Thank you very, very much.